Reading from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Hari Lila, chapter 5, text 22, which is from the Brahma Samhita. Does anybody know, it's a long purport, does anybody remember where the devotee who spoke on this verse left off from the purport? Anybody remember?
Oh, on that one?
6-page purport. I'm just going to start pretty much in the second half, if nobody remembers specifically. Chintamani prakarasad mashukalpa vriksha.
Chintamani prakarasad mashukalpa vriksha.
Laksha vritesu surabir abhipalayantam.
Laksha vritesu surabir abhipalayantam.
Lakshmi sahasra satasambhrama sevyamanam.
Brahma sevyamanam.
Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami.
Govindamani purusham tamaham bhajami.
Chant, please.
Chintamani prakarasad masukalpa vriksha.
Chintamani prakarasad mashukalpa vriksha.
Laksha vriteshu surabir abhipalayantam.
Laksha vriteshu surabir abhipalayantam.
Lakshmi sahasra shata sambrahma sevyamanam.
Lakshmi sahasra satasambhrama sevyamanam.
Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami.
Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Touchstone.
Touchstone.
Prakara.
Prakara.
Groups made of.
Groups made of.
Sadmashu.
Sadmashu.
In abodes.
In abodes.
Kalpavriksha.
Kalpavriksha.
Of desire trees.
Of desire trees.
Laksha.
Laksha.
By millions.
By millions.
Avriteshu.
Avriteshu.
Surrounded.
Surrounded.
Surabhi.
Surabir.
Surabhi cows.
Surabi cows.
Abhipalayantam.
Abhipalayantam.
Tending.
Tending.
Lakshmi.
Lakshmi.
Of goddesses of fortune.
Of goddesses of fortune.
Sahasra.
Sahasra.
Of thousands.
Of thousands.
Shata.
Shata.
By hundreds.
By hundreds.
Sambrahma.
Sambrahma.
With great respect.
With great respect.
Sevyamanam.
Sevyamanam.
Being served.
Being served.
Govindam.
Govindam.
Govinda.
Govinda.
Adipurusham.
Adipurusham.
The original person.
The original person.
Tam.
Tam.
Him.
Him.
Aham.
Aham.
I.
I.
Bhajami.
Bhajami.
Worship.
Worship.
Translation. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, who is tending the cows, yielding all desires, in abodes built with spiritual gems, and surrounded by millions of purpose trees. He is always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune. So I'm going to skip forward. 1, 2, 3 full pages. I'm reading from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Any of you are online following along. I'm in the last paragraph of page 389. Prabhupada is writing here. For the perfect yogi who has attained success in the method of leaving his body in perfect consciousness, transferring from one planet to another is as easy as an ordinary man's walking to the grocery store. Contemplate that. As already discussed, the material body is just a covering of the spiritual soul. Mind and intelligence are the undercoverings, and the gross body of Earth, water, air, and so on is the overcoating of the soul. As such, any advanced soul who has realized himself by the yogic process, who knows the relationship between matter and spirit, can leave the gross dress of the soul in perfect order as he desires. By the grace of God, we have complete freedom. Because the Lord is kind to us, we can live anywhere, either in the spiritual sky or the material sky, upon whichever planet we desire. However, misuse of the freedom causes one to fall down into the material world and suffer the threefold miseries of conditioned life. The living of a miserable life in the material world by dint of the soul's choice is nicely illustrated by Milton in his book Paradise Lost. Similarly, by choice the soul can again regain paradise and return back home, back to Godhead. At the critical time of death, one can place the vital force between the two eyebrows and decide where he wants to go. If he is reluctant to maintain any connection with the material world, he can, in less than a second, reach the transcendental Vaikuntha and appear there completely in his spiritual body, which will be suitable for him in the spiritual atmosphere. He has simply to desire to leave the material world, both in finer and in grosser forms, and then move the vital force to the topmost part of the skull and leave the body from the hole in the skull called the Brahma Randhra. This is easy for one perfect in the practice of yoga. Easy, just like an ordinary man walking to the grocery store. Shows you how far away we are from that position. And this is just a yogi. I mean, not just a yogi, but... Of course, a man is endowed with free will, and as such, if he does not want to free himself from the material world, he may enjoy the life of Brahmapad, occupation of the post of Brahma, and visit Siddhaloka, the planets of materially perfect beings who have full capacities to control gravity, space, and time. To visit these higher planets in the material universe, one need not give up his mind and intelligence, finer matter, but need only give up grosser matter, the material body. Each and every planet has its particular atmosphere, and if one wants to travel to any particular planet within the material universe, one has to adapt his material body to the climatic condition of that planet. For instance, if one wants to go from India to Europe, where the climatic condition is different, one has to change his dress accordingly. Similarly, a complete change of body is necessary if one wants to go to the transcendental planets of Vaikuntha. However, if one wants to go to the higher material planets, he can keep his finer dress of mind, intelligence, and ego, but he has to leave his gross dress, the body, made of earth, water, fire, etc. When one goes to a transcendental planet, it is necessary to change both the finer and gross bodies, for one has to reach the spiritual sky completely in spiritual form. This change of dress will take place automatically at the time of death, if one so desires. A lot more to read here. Bhagavad Gita confirms that one can attain his next material body according to his desires at the time he leaves his body. This is a really important statement Prabhupada makes next. The desire of the mind carries the soul in a suitable atmosphere as the wind carries aromas from one place to another. It's important because Prabhupada doesn't say the desires of the soul or the desires of the individual. He says the desires of the mind are what carries us from one body to the next. That's why Krishna stresses so much in Bhagavad Gita that one has to become a yogi and learn to control the mind, because it's according to the desires of the mind that we get our next body. Krishna says, whatever one thinks of at the time of death, that state he will attain without fail. And if we don't have our mind controlled, it's going to be all over. And Prabhupada speaks earlier in the purport that a person at the time of death, materialist at the time of death, he's completely bewildered by what's going on with the body, especially on the gross platform. And he's not able to control the gross body or the subtle body, and the mind is completely disturbed. And he's just forced to take birth, his next birth, according to his deeds in this lifetime. But Prabhupada is explaining that the yogi can control, he can decide where he wants to go in his next lifetime. And Prabhupada is describing something about the heavenly planets within this universe. He said he can go to the planet of Lord Brahma, he can take the post of Lord Brahma. He means we, any one of us, or we can go even beyond that to the Vaikuntha planets. And even within the Vaikuntha planets, we can choose our destination according to which form of the Lord that we are most attracted to. We can even go to the Lord Krishna's personal planet, Krishna Loka, and even there's distinctions of, I hesitate to say higher and lower, but in terms of the emotional and loving connection with the Lord. So there's different places one can live even on Krishna's planet of Krishna Loka. So Prabhupada continues, unfortunately those who are not yogis but gross materialists, who throughout their lives indulge in sense gratification, are puzzled by the disarrangement of the body and mental condition at the time of death. Such gross sensualists, encumbered by the main ideas, desires, and association of the lives they have led, desire something against their interest, and thus foolishly take on new bodies that perpetuate their material miseries. Arjuna raised this particular point in his question to Krishna. What is it that forces one to act, even against one's will, and to perform sinful activities? And what does Krishna say? It is lust and lust only. It forces us to act according to our own best interest. Listen, people hear that, smoking cigarettes is bad. Everybody knows it, at least they've heard it. But some people do so anyway. They're working against their own self-interest. People know that if you break the law, there's every chance you'll go to prison and be punished. People break the law anyhow. They're working against their own self-interest. And this is symptomatic of one who has not controlled their mind. That, the mind leads us around. If the mind were a consultant that came in today, just look at what the mind, it comes in and it just says, don't do that, do this. And then, in an hour or a day or a week or a month, it says, don't do that. The very thing it told you to do something else. It's just, if the mind were a consultant, we would fire it immediately. But, we view our mind as our dearmost friend. So Prabhupada continues, systematic training of the mind and intelligence is therefore needed, so that at the time of death one may consciously desire a suitable body, either on this planet or another material planet or even a transcendental planet. A civilization that does not consider the progressive advancement of the immortal soul merely fosters a bestial life of ignorance. Prabhupada is heavy in this purport. So he goes on to speak about how the yogis, by controlling the mind and by situating the life energy within the different areas in the body, he can leave the body through the Brahma Randra, the hole in the top of the skull, rather than the eyes, the nostrils, the mouth, the ears, the anus, the genital. And by doing that, by leaving the body through the Brahma Randra, he can go to any planet that he wants. And so the yogis, they practice closing all the different orifices and trying to position the pure soul in properly within the air circulating within the body, so that the internal airs, they are in synchronous and in harmony with the external airs of the universe. And when it's like that, he can come out, the soul can come out through Brahma Randra and not merge into the universal air, but enter into it, just like you enter into a river, and go to wherever he wants within his material world or even in the spiritual world. And but I want to speak a little bit, rather than read all the rest of this purport and due respect to Srila Prabhupada, I want to speak a little bit about the actual verse. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, went to sleep, who is tending the cows, yielding all desires, in abodes built with spiritual gems and surrounded by millions of purpose trees. He is always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune. So there's a number of very, very significant points here. But let me make a step back. This is, what's the verse number, 29? What's it say? 20, well, I don't know. Okay. This it is, I believe, the 29th verse of the Brahma Samhita, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it's verse number 29. And in the previous verses, I'm not sure who the speaker was, because it's presented kind of like in third person, but I'm pretty sure that the speaker of the entire Brahma Samhita is Lord Brahma. Anyhow, we'll go on that assumption. In the previous verses, he is speaking about the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and how he actually creates the material nature, the material energy, the material manifestation, and then the secondary creation within each universe. And after speaking about that for 21 verses, then he starts speaking about himself. For text number, I want to read through a few of these verses because it's really significant building up to this actual verse. Text number 23. At that time, after having appeared, Brahma was inspired by the energy of the Lord, so he developed a desire to create the worlds under the influence of his previous impressions. But he saw only darkness and nothing else in all directions. 24. A divine voice then spoke to him directly and gave him the dear mantra composed of the Kama Bij, the words Krishnaya, Govinda, Gopijana Vallabhaya, and the syllable dear to fire, Svaha. Then the Lord said to Brahma, "You are expert in meditation. You should meditate using this mantra. You will attain your desires." So in 26, Brahma sat in meditation for a long time, and in so doing, pleased the highest form of God, indestructible Govinda, Krishna, the Lord of Svetadweep and Goloka, the land made of wish-fulfilling gems called Chintamani. Govinda is worshipped from a distance by material nature in the form of its modes. He has a self-revealing eternal form of knowledge and bliss. He is seated on a large throne in the pericarpal of a lotus with millions of stamens and thousands of petals, playing a flute with his lotus mouth, and surrounded by the cowgirls and praised by other associates. Pericarpal of the lotus flower is the thing right in the center, and it kind of looks like a shower head, just for understanding. 27. Then the embodiment of the Vedas, the Gayatri mantra, emanating from the sound of Krishna's flute, appeared in the four mouths of Brahma, having entered his 8 ears. Uttering the Gayatri mantra, Brahma, now purified, attained second birth from the original Guru, Krishna. Where to go? And Prabhupada says elsewhere that this is actually how second birth occurs. And we talk about, in time of second initiation, it's considered that we're taking our second birth. And it's described right here in this verse very nicely, that when the spiritual father, who is a spiritual master, when he utters the Gayatri mantra, which is the spiritual mother, into the ear of the disciple, at that moment, second birth takes place from the combination of the spiritual father, the energy of the spiritual father and the spiritual mother. That's the source of our actual second birth. So Brahma, now purified, attained second birth from the original Guru Krishna. Enlightened by the Gayatri mantra, Brahma became thoroughly versed in the highest truth. He satisfied Keshava by the following verses of praise, which are in agreement with the statements of the Vedas. So Lord Brahma, Prabhupada writes elsewhere that he is very fond of meditating. He likes meditating. So Krishna gave him this particular mantra to meditate on, the Kama Bij. And so you meditate on that, and by meditating on that, all your desires are going to be fulfilled. And so Lord Brahma, he meditated on that verse, and he attained complete enlightenment as described here. And now what form did the enlightenment take place in? He was given a vision, a glimpse of the full spiritual manifestation, the entire spiritual world, including the planet of Goloka, which is also known as Svetadweep, including Gokula, which is the centermost part of Goloka or Svetadweep, and all of the surrounding areas and all of the Vaikuntha planets. He was shown this. And Prabhupada gives the analogy, it's kind of like a television, in the sense that, you're situated in one place, and you can see by the material arrangement of the television what's going on at that time in another place. And so Lord Brahma, when he began to share or offer prayers to the Lord, the very first prayer that he offered is this verse. Now, when you have something really, really, really wonderful that you want to share with your close friends, you start with the very best of what you have to offer, and you share that first to get their attention or whatever the reason is. And so, what is the first thing that Lord Brahma says? I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor who is tending the cows, yielding all desires, and abodes built with spiritual gems and surrounded by millions of purpose trees. He is always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune. So there's a number of really significant points in this in this verse. Let me find my proper page in my notes here. Okay, so first of all, Lord Brahma, he refers to Krishna as Govinda. Very significant name. And what does the name Govinda mean? It means the Lord of the cows. And he's referring to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God, as the Lord of the cows. That's the first point that he makes. And then he says he's the primeval Lord. What does primeval mean? Primeval means if you go all the way back to the beginning of something, all the way back to its source, whoever or whatever existed at that time is primeval. So Krishna is referred to by Brahma as the primeval Lord. In other words, the source of all the different incarnations of God. Then he goes on, he refers to him also as the first progenitor. And the progenitor is, the definition, it's the ancestor or the creator of a particular line. It's called the progenitor. And Lord Brahma addresses him as the first progenitor, who is he's yielding all desires. He's giving anyone and everyone whatever they want. Maybe not in the quantity or at the time, but he gives people what they want according to their qualification to receive it. He's yielding all desires. All the buildings, the abodes, are built with spiritual gems, chintamani, touchstones. Chintamani, you touch the chintamani stone, and it will give you anything that you want. And that's what all the buildings, in the cowherd sheds specifically, are built of this touchstone, chintamani. He's surrounded by millions and millions of kalpavriksha, desire trees. And the desire tree in the material world, an orange tree can give you an orange and that's it. It can't give you an apple, it can't give you cheese, it can't give you green beans. It can't give you anything but oranges. But in the spiritual world, there's kalpavriksha trees that can give you anything that you desire. Anything. And is there one kalpavriksha tree? No. Millions. Millions and millions. And lastly, he's served with great reverence and affection by hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune, or Lakshmis. So picture the environment. He's served with great reverence and affection, love and affection, by hundreds of thousands of beautiful gopis. There's millions and millions of desire trees around there that any one of them can fulfill any and every desire you have. Even the cow sheds, even the sheds and all the buildings are made with touchstone, which can yield anything that you want. And what is he doing? What's Krishna doing? In that environment, he's tending the cows. He's taking care of the cows. He doesn't have to do that. Anything that he would possibly want, there's already ample facility to, even if he wasn't God, there's ample facility to provide anything that he possibly wants. But he wants to serve the cows. He wants to take care of the cows. What does that tell us? That protecting the cows and serving the cows is absolutely the topmost activity that one can do. If God is doing this, and he can do anything he wants or nothing at all, then, we should put importance to that. And so I'm going to carry that point forward here. Where Srila Prabhupada writes in a letter that, let me find it here. Agriculture and protecting the cow, this is the main business of the residents of Vrindaban. Let me start earlier. This is a letter Srila Prabhupada wrote on July 27, 1973 to Kirtanananda Swami. Please accept my dear Kirtananda Maharaj, please accept my blessings. I beg to acknowledge receipt of your letter dated 2 days earlier, 21st July 73. I have noted the contents with great pleasure. Yes, go on acquiring the surrounding lands, and in this way we will establish a local, self-governing village and show all the world a practical example of spiritual life as Krishna himself exhibited in Vrindaban. Agriculture and protecting the cows, this is the main business of the residents of Vrindaban, and above all, simply loving Krishna. The cows, the trees, the cowherd men and gopis, their chief engagement was loving Krishna, and in New Vrindaban, we want to create this atmosphere and thereby show the whole world how practical and sublime our movement is. So Prabhupada wanted us to, not past tense, wants that we imbibe this loving mood that Krishna himself has in the form of Govinda, and just tend to the cows, just take care of the cows as our main business. And agriculture. Tending the cows means also growing not just the food for the cows, but also producing our own food. And he said this should be the main business of New Vrindavan. And by doing that, now not the only business, because he writes other places about other business that we should have, but it's the main business. And by doing that, he said, we will create this atmosphere of the spiritual world, and thereby show the whole world how practical and sublime our movement is. So Srila Prabhupada gave us tremendous responsibility here, huge responsibility, to show the whole world how practical and sublime our movement is. And, we've got a long ways to go to get there from where we are now, 50-some years into our existence as a community. But it's... Yeah, so this particular excerpt from this letter ties in completely with what Srila Prabhupada is speaking in the purport to this verse. And Prabhupada begins the purport and ends the purport on the same point. It's 6+ pages, where he gives in the beginning of the purport, he gives a very nice, elaborate description of the spiritual world, but not in a general way, in a general place, but in Gokula, Goloka or Gokula Vrindavan. And I'll read the beginning of the purport. This description of the abode of Krishna gives us definite information of the transcendental place where life is not only eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge, but there are ample vegetables, milk, jewels, and beautiful homes and gardens tended by lovely damsels who are all goddesses of fortune. And Srila Prabhupada ends the purport he dedicates the entire purport to, first of all, describing this abode of Goloka Vrindavan or Gokula Vrindavan, and then describing the activities of the inhabitants there by describing the transcendental atmosphere, which he also says that he wants us to manifest, to create a replica of Vrindavan in terms of the atmosphere here in New Vrindavan. And he spends the purport describing the spiritual world and describing how one can attain it by the process of mystic yoga, by becoming a perfect yogi,